Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the CEU Executive MBA Tel Aviv Online Open Day. I'm Thomas Lamel, the Senior Program Manager of CEU Executive MBA, and I will guide you through this evening. We will start with a program presentation delivered by me. Afterwards, we will talk with Agnes Schramm, one of our alumni, about the alumni experience. You will have the opportunity to get to know Anita Jovic, one of our current participants. After the meet and greet part, our VIP guest, Professor Miklos Koren, will deliver his keynote presentation on expat managers in international trade. And after that, we will have a Q&A session about your questions. If you have any questions that could pop up spontaneously, feel free to just shoot them in the chat box. I will collect them for the Q&A session in the end, but feel free to interact with us through the chat and the chat box and the Q&A part. So I want to start with a basic question here. That is an MBA still worth it? Because you don't have to go very far these days to encounter that we are witnessing fundamental transformations in the world in a century. In 2008, we had a big financial crisis, for example. In 2015, we've had a large refugee crisis. And right now, we're experiencing the biggest pandemic in a century. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is taking place. Some of them are positive, and some of them are pretty dangerous, to be honest. So the key question is, how do we as business professionals, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and unpredictable environment? And the next obvious question is an MBA the way to do it? We've seen an explosion of online education in the last year, and I'll show you why we believe our MBA is still worth it. So if you're interested in further education, you usually start searching for an executive MBA or an MBA in the city you live in. What you tend to find is mostly a pretty standard MBA curriculum. The faculty is mostly local with a low number of international students, actually. Some programs in Western Europe and the UK and the USA can be quite expensive, starting at 100,000 euro or dollars, or even more expensive than that. But a local program allows you to leave your job. If you contrast that with top business schools in the world, which are mostly in the US or in Switzerland or the UK, what you will find is that they often have a very differentiated curriculum. That means they offer a certain expertise and a certain perspective or a certain mission. Because of the full-time format, their student body is international, actually. But you're leaving the labor market for at least 1 year or even 2 years, which is another financial burden. Speaking of financial burden, these programs are expensive at more than 120,000 euro or even more. And you may have to move your family to the EMBA location. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of two worlds. There is no work interruption thanks to the practical and flexible modular format. I will talk about it in a while. The Executive MBA is mission-driven. As you've seen from our website, it's called the Executive MBA for the Open World. I will talk about it later. Thanks to the modularity of the program, we have a very international student body. According to the Times Higher Education, we are the second most international university in the world. And thanks to this modular format, participants can fly in and can fly out, which is a major advantage of the program. I already mentioned world-class faculty. And I want to introduce you to some of our faculty members. For example, Joy. If you're new to finance, Joy is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our students tell us how she's just unique in explaining very complex financial concepts. Or for strategy, you'll have Yusuf, who has taught in more than 40 countries and advises leading Fortune 500 companies. For economics, for example, Mark Kaufman, an expert in applied theory with a PhD from Harvard University. Or our faculty director, Professor Maciej Kiszlowski, who's an expert on regulation and non-market strategy. We also have Sofia Barani, an expert on the future of work, which includes automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. For leadership, Austin, our world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents. He will lead the way. And if you're already experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert in complex investments with a PhD from Princeton. And last but not least, for innovation, you'll have Mike Labelle, who holds a prestigious EU Jean Monnet chair. And here are some of our visiting faculty, for example, Professor Christian Selos from Stanford, Miklos Saberi from Columbia, Omar Hernandez from Berkeley, Hui Chen from Zurich, and Milena Nikolova, the Chief Behavior Officer of Behavior Smart. So here's what the program looks like. It's a 10-module program, as you can see. The dates you can see on the screen right now are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional or family activities based on these dates. As you can clearly see from the chart, we have 3 modules in the first year, 4 in the second year, and 3 in the third year, which gives you a lot of flexibility and balance in your life. As you might found out, we are piggybacking around popular European holidays like November 1st or August 15th or May 1st, when it's easier for you to take time off for our modules. In the summers, our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place in Budapest, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world we invite to teach your classes. Once you are graduating, once you have completed the modular format, there will come eventually the day when you finish with us, and you will join the CEU Alumni Network from around the world. As I already said, CEU is the 2nd most international university, and you can rely on an active elite network on every continent. Being the 2nd most international university in the world is being reflected in the distribution and the allocation of our alumni all over the world. We have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you are in the world, wherever you go in the world, wherever your life leads you, you will find CEU alumni to interact with. And the CEU Alumni Network consists of 18,000 professionals around the world. And it's a network that you can count on. And it's basically one of the key assets that we have. So the key question is, how are we able to offer such a high quality program? The obvious answer lies in our benefactor and in the founder of CEU, in George Soros, who created Central European University with the mission to promote open societies. Just recently, in 2021, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion in endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. So I've mentioned that we are a mission-driven university. I've mentioned the executive MBA for the open world. But what does the executive MBA for the open world actually mean? What makes CEU so unique? First of all, when we talk about open world, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies and privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in context of the composition of the cohort. Diversity is key to creating a successful program, and it's part of our DNA and not just an empty catchphrase for us. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. That means that every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives that create polarization in societies nowadays. And we believe that the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. Following that logic, we are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. The way we finance the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally did not have access or did not have been able to actually join the executive MBA program. And we see managers not just as people who deal with businesses or resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. We see managers as positive change agents, whatever their professional background is. If they're corporate people, if they're entrepreneurs, if they're climate change activists, if they're coming from the public sector, if they're artists coming from the cultural field, or if they're from the human rights field, they are positive change agents and can make the world a little bit better. So what does the CEU Executive MBA classroom look like? As you can see from the image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate discussion and interaction of our 65 managers who have the average of 14 years of work experience, of which 3 years are leadership experience at least. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you will find in local MBA programs. And our mission, our approach is to take you, experts in your specific field, from this level of functional expertise to the strategic level. We also offer, if you top quality online experience, if you're not able to travel or if you don't want to travel, if it's too dangerous for you to travel because of Corona restrictions or whatever, you can join. You can choose to join online. It's a flexible approach. You can join. You can basically choose at every module if you want to participate offline or online. We invested heavily in studio-grade microphones to capture lecturers and all participants, because it's not a one-way street. Exchanging knowledge is not just a one-way street going from the lecturer to the participant to the student. It also takes place from the student to the lecturer and among participants themselves. We have invested in large screens and high quality cameras to actually catch all the debate entries that are being made during discussions. And we have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams. The support teams are a core essential part of the group work that will be taking place within all the modules that you will be doing. And we guarantee diversity in all the support teams. You will not be placed in a support teams with people coming from the same country, speaking the same language, being in the same industry, etc., because we want to expose you to diversity, not just for diversity's sake itself, but because diversity exposes you to different backgrounds and to different perspectives. And this is where learning takes place. This is where learning really kicks in. If you're exposed to new ideas and new approaches, this is where the strength of diversity kicks in. And of course, all the time, we offer high quality individual support from the stage of application to the onboarding phase, to the phase where you're a participant in the program, to the when you're part of the modules, and to the alumni phase. We are always here for you, and you will always have high quality individual support. This is just an example of one of our group sessions. As you can see, you can have all the names. You can see all the names of people contributing to the debate. You can see the groups colored, determined by the colors. So you won't be missing out any debate entries while you're interacting with your fellow executives. So we invite you to join the open world. The application starts online. We offer a competitive program at 29,000 euro, which is pretty competitive, relatively low compared to other programs in the region. But there's a specific reason that I already mentioned. Because of our financial endowment, we are passing on this financial endowment, this financial advantage to our participants, because we want to democratize higher education, and we don't want to price out people who are coming from less developed or less or lower income countries. As I already mentioned, we offer an online option. You can participate online if travel is inconvenient. We have negotiated special discount rates with partner hotels in Budapest and Vienna, at all levels, from the budget to the luxury level. We have also negotiated discounts with airlines like Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group in order to reduce other costs that might occur if you participate in the executive MBA. So we want you to join the open world. Join us by applying for the program by March 27th, which is our deadline, the application deadline. However, I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible through our website, because we have a first come, first served policy. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you're able to reserve your study seat. And if you're applying right now, you can secure a big early bird discount. We invite you to book a one-on-one consultation with me to discuss your questions on scholarships, on financial support, on the modular format, or just optimize your application. I'm here for you, and I'm happy to help you. So it's one thing for you, I guess, to hear about the program from us, from the program office, because we're very much committed, we're passionate about the program, and we're super convinced of the advantages and the strengths of the program. But it's another thing to hear about the program from people who have actually done the program or are in the program right now. So I would like to introduce to you Agnes Schramm, who is the operations manager at the CEU Innovations Lab and an alumna of the Executive MBA, the MBA back then. And I want to welcome you, Agnes. Thank you very much for joining. And if you could just briefly give us some background on your career development and why you chose CEU back then.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thanks for having me, and hello, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Agnes Schramm. Currently, I'm operations manager at CEU Innovations Lab, but actually I've been working at CEU for a very long time. And this is where my story starts with the MBA as well. So I have a quite untypical background for an MBA student, because I have a background in humanities. I studied English and German language and linguistics, which is really another world. But I started to work at CEU a long time ago. I was working in the in student recruitment. I started with admissions, and then I moved on to student recruitment. First, I was working with bachelor's programs, and then with the MBA. So after some time, when I was working with the MBA program, recruiting students for the MBA program, I just felt the need to understand the product that I'm dealing with a little more, obviously. I worked with wonderful people. I saw that, these people who are applying to our MBA program are really great people with vast amount of experience, great backgrounds, and I just wanted to somehow be closer to them. And to be able to talk about the MBA, to present the MBA from the inside. So I decided to apply, but of course for me it was um, not easy, because I was very afraid that with my background I won't manage to do this, because I was never good in maths and that's not my field. So I prepared a lot, to be honest. But I had the advantage that I knew all the professors, because I was working for them. So I went to Tibor Vörös, who was teaching quantitative methods, and told him, okay, Tibor, listen, well, you know me, you work with me. You don't know anything about my math skills, but I need some help in this. So he gave me a book with just basic maths, and I started to go through that book. I didn't finish it; it was this thick. So I just went through the first few chapters, but that was enough. That was enough. That gave me confidence enough to apply and to finish all the quantitative courses. And I'm not saying that it was not difficult, because it was for me, but I could manage. And it really helped me, this preparation. Of course, those of you who have backgrounds in finance or economics or whatever, of course you won't need this, but for me it was helpful. And I just want to mention this to encourage those who have a similar background as me. So even with a completely different background, you shouldn't be afraid to do an MBA. And of course, my classmates helped me a lot. I had wonderful classmates from various countries, with various different experiences, and those classmates who had, that there were a lot who were really good in maths and finance. They helped me a lot, so I'm really grateful for them. But the good experience is that I could help them as well with my skills in different subjects. So this is actually, I think, what I would say, what is my main takeaway, my one of the most important experiences from the MBA, how we learned from each other, because I really feel that we learned from each other at least as much as we learned from the professors. So that was the best experience. And the network, all the friendships, all the connections I made during the program, they are still alive today. And this is actually how I got to my current position, because when I did the MBA, I started in 2014, finished in 2016, and the iLab, the Innovations Lab, which is the startup incubator of the university, was founded in 2015, and that's when our current director, Andrea Kozma, also graduated from the EMBA, and she took over the iLab in 2016, and she built it up, and she created the incubation program that we have today. And she asked me to join her after a couple of years. So this is how I joined the iLab 1.5 years ago. And since then, I'm still using a lot of my experiences that I learned in the MBA, especially my network, because we have many mentors in the iLab who are CEU MBA alumni, because they want to come back, they want to meet new startups, they want to meet the younger generation and learn from them as well. They want to share their experiences with the new generation of entrepreneurs and learn from them as well. So this is a two-way relationship, and it works really nicely.
You are the perfect example of how well our career development works and how well the network, the networking part is. I think you mentioned, like in the beginning, you mentioned a very important point, that you did not have a business background. And I think this is very important for our MBA, because many people of our current cohorts come from a non-traditional, non-business background. They're NGO people or climate change activists, or coming from the public sector. We also have people coming from the cultural field, with applications coming in from arts. And I don't want to frighten off people, because they fit into a program the same way as experienced people do. Because in the quantitative courses like finance, we have a standard track and an advanced track. So if you have any knowledge, of course, you will be placed in the advanced track. And if you don't have any knowledge, you will, start at the very bottom, at the very beginning, learning the ABC in financing. And so you don't have to be afraid of the MBA just because of the business part. I think that's very important to say, that whatever your strength is, you perfectly fit into the executive MBA at CEU. And you just mentioned the networking. I mean, we part of the networking at CEU is the career development, which is a whole department itself at CEU, which is open to CEU executive MBA participants. Of course, if you need advice on career placement, if you need career advice or concrete help in moving on in your career, you can reach out to the career development office. Or you have the networking that takes place within the executive MBA, there's structured and informal networking sessions. We also have our alumni relations department, if you want to have a more structured alumni approach, if you want to reach out to certain people in a certain region, in a certain area, in a certain industry, in a certain city, they are happy to connect you and connect the dots. So you will be connected among 18,000 professionals around the world. And I think that's a huge asset that we have at CEU.
Absolutely.
Do you want to add something to it, Agnes?
I think that's all. I think you summarized basically all my experience as well, so I can only agree. And of course, if anyone has any questions to me, I'm happy to share my experiences individually as well. So, Thomas, you can share my contacts with the inquirers, and I wish the best of luck to everyone who is applying.
Thank you very much for joining us, your experience from the alumni perspective. I would like to move on to Anita, who is actually doing the program right now. So she's not talking from the retrospect perspective, but from the current perspective. Just so you know, Anita Jovic is business consultant and owner of Anado at AI. She's the founder of Artificial Intelligence Serbia. She's the co-founder, the co-managing partner of the Data Science Conference, and venture partner of the Founder Institute, and participant of the EMBA class of 23. Hi, Anita.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you. Hope you can hear me.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. If you could briefly introduce yourself and give us some kind of background information, who you are and why you chose CEU Executive MBA back then.
Thank you, Thomas, for the invitation. I want to say hi to everyone that is listening. And from you said quite a lot about what I do already, so I won't repeat myself. I'm quite immersed in innovation ecosystem in Serbia since 2014. I work with 200 plus startups and small to medium-sized companies, so I have more, let's say, experience on the innovation side. I want to say why I joined the CEU. I will separate it, let's say, in 5 pillars. And what you said, and Agnes, I agree the most. So I learned for my summer module a lot from my colleagues as well. So I said the first reason why I joined, it was more that is the international cohort. At the moment in 2023 cohort, we have people from 40 plus countries, like Jason from Chicago, Suzanne from Finland, Sandra is from Austria, originally from Germany. So it's quite a diverse and inclusive group, and I love it the most, this part. Why it is important? Because people are from different backgrounds, and not only culture-wise, but also there is people from corporations as well as entrepreneurs, then people from small to medium-sized companies, so we can quite a lot learn from each other. And when we are into the discussion during the lectures, we can bring the real use cases and the real things that are going on in our separate industries and verticals, as well as our background. So it is quite the important pillar for me. The second one will be price vs value, because in Serbia at the moment we only have one school that covers MBA, and compared to CEU University, CEU has more accreditations. So it is, you have the US accreditation as well as Austria accreditation. And compared to the price, it is let's say, a European price. And then I go into the third pillar, which will be the professors. What I love the most is when I look at the background of professors, you kind of get the Ivy League professors from European price. And that is for me was the biggest value to apply to CEU. And also, let's say, for example, on our summer module, what you did beside all the professors, as you mentioned, like the professor Joy Chan, she was outstanding. She is originally from Sydney, but she also lectures at Swiss University. So you get the top-notch professors from different countries. And for example, what CEU did, they think in so small details. For example, they brought the professor from US who was teaching us how to do the top-notch presentations. So it was part of leadership module. So even in that small details, you have the highest amount of value. And also after every module, we give the evaluation to professors. So I think that the value of the diploma will just go up, in my opinion, because CEU staff is doing a lot to bring the quality and to listen to our evaluation and our feedback, so they can improve for the next upcoming cohort. So I believe that's why the professor was really important pillar for me to apply. The fourth one, I will be brief, sorry. The fourth one is that enables me to stay focused on my job. So it is part-time and I can plan ahead 1 year, as Thomas said. So the dates stay the same, so I can play and schedule the flights and everything. So I can stay focused on my job. And this is like additional value and investment in myself that I can advance my education. So the last one and the fifth one.
Sorry for interrupting. Please go on.
Mm-hmm. No problem. So the last one and the fifth one is the curriculum or the program. What I love the most is that we have a preparation period, then we have the module and the exam period. So you can everything except module is done remotely, and that is what I love the most, because I can interact with my colleagues, but in the same time stay connected with professors in a remote environment. And also why the curriculum is well structured is because it covers innovative subjects such as AI. We have a data science module, as well as strategy, as well as let's say finance is pretty important. As I said, Joy really introduced us to how to invest into the stock market, how to manage our assets as the leaders and managers of our companies. So it is quite important that they cover this 4.1 industry subjects, such as cybersecurity, and this is part of additional, like it's not the main module, but some of the 4.1 industries are covered in, Thomas, can you help me? It's called electives, right? Yeah, because we are still didn't choose it for this year, but I think it will be introduced to us next year until the second module. And that's it. Like that are the five pillars, sorry, that motivated me to apply for CEU. And just for end, I would just say, please don't wait the end moment, because I was the one that applied the last day. So it's just better for you to apply as soon as possible, because in the end, I will need to pay more just because I was late. And thank you, I got the fellowship as well, so I was really grateful. But for example, if I applied 1 to 2 months earlier, maybe I will have 10% deduction in the price. And when you put that in finance and Excel, and you see that is not like a really small amount, so apply as soon as possible. That will be my end note.
You're hijacking my job. You're selling the program like a professional. I mean, there's nothing to add to what you said. I mean,
no, it's just my experience, really. If anybody wants to ask me, like on LinkedIn, how was our summer module? Because I just started. I finished my first summer module, and successfully my first exam period, which was really happy about, especially because my schedule is quite dense. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me and ask any kind of questions.
And we'll be meeting in 2 weeks. The next module will take place at the end of October.
Correct, in Vienna, yeah.
The next module. I mean, you mentioned so many good points. I mean, you're flattering the professors that are who are watching the open day right now. Since you mentioned,
okay.
since you mentioned the quality of our professors, thank you very much. You mentioned again diversity and the different backgrounds in class, and I think this is it's not just a marketing, catchphrase for us, diversity. It's not for us, to print colorful brochures. It's an advantage, it's added value for the participants. If they're exposed to new approaches and different perspectives, it's where the learning kicks in. It's where you actually learn. If you're in a group, based in a group with only people coming from the same industry, from the same country, there's not much to learn, to be honest. But if you're placed in a group with people coming from the other end of the world, literally, coming from a completely different industry with completely new approaches, this is where you start learning how people, solve ideas and solve problems and create ideas differently.
Correct, yeah.
Maybe better or just differently to how you are coming up with those ideas.
Would I have like just 30 seconds more just to mention something that I experienced today?
Great.
Yeah, today, because I'm in Vienna at the moment, I was in your library, so I want to say what some of the things that I wasn't aware, because it's really huge. It's hard to grasp like what you're doing it the multiple times. So library is one of the best I was in, like in Europe. So it's really well equipped, and that is another benefit. And I didn't know that you have a career advising department. So this is pretty cool as well. If you're doing an MBA because you want to change into another career, you can have a free one-to-one consulting when you get enrolled with the top professionals. The boss is actually from the US. So that is like it was quite interesting to me. And for example, yesterday we had a fireside chat with the ecosystem enabler from Israeli, Tel Aviv. Her name is Hamdat Sagi, and she actually talked about how the startup nation in Israel started. So you have all these like additional things that you can utilize. And also I want to say thank you for keeping up the safety measures on the topest level during our Budapest module. So if you're concerned about that, for example, in our cohort, I think that 95% of people were on site. So even the people from US and Canada and from East Russia, they flew in to the Budapest, and the safety measures were just on top. So you don't have to worry about that. And if you want to do it remotely, there is always an option to do so. So thank you.
I already received a question about the COVID measures. I will keep that question for the Q&A session, because it's basically the elephant in the room that is always being asked.
Awesome.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for being available. I want to move on to Professor Miklos Koren now, who's our VIP of tonight, delivering a keynote presentation on expat managers in international trade. As you can see from the slide that he's sharing right now, he's a PhD from Harvard. Before, he worked at Princeton and the New York Fed. He's the founder of the Business Analytics Master's Program and the CEU Microdata Research Group. His research focuses on international trade and economic development, and he publishes regularly in leading international academic journals. He's participated in numerous international research projects, including a large-scale starting grant of the European Research Council. Miklos, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Thomas. And it's a great pleasure to be here and to talk to you about my research. So this research is about the role of expatriate managers in international trade, and I think it very nicely connects to some of the points raised by Anita and Agnes about the importance of interacting with people from other countries and other cultures. And this is based on joint work with colleagues Christina Orban and Amos Telegdi. And just to give you a bit of motivation of why we are doing this, let me tell you a story from the Budapest real estate market. So this is a real estate development project in very close to downtown Budapest. This tower is one of the first proper skyscraper in Budapest. Now it's already twice the height in the picture. That started out as a Qatari investment project. And even though it's a big project by Budapest standards, it's a small investment for the Qatari investor group. And so they didn't really send anyone to be resident in Budapest with this project. They had some meetings, but no regular presence. And pretty much over the years, it turned out that it's very difficult to get things done. I mean, in real estate, you probably have to be there to make important decisions. And so eventually they decided to withdraw and then sell the project. So what we're trying to do in this research is to think about this idea of face-to-face interaction with others. Why is it important in a statistical way? So the specific questions we are asking is, what roles do expatriate managers play in foreign direct investment and in international trade also? So if in a foreign direct investment project there is an acquisition, how does this firm start behaving differently after being acquired? And how do they change the patterns of trade, the countries that they trade with? And our particular approach is I already mentioned, it's a very statistical, data-driven approach, because we think, and it's also very much in line with the mission of the executive MBA, that the kind of stories that I showed you at the beginning are important to get some ideas, but they might not capture the full story. It might be biased because some stories are easier to remember than others. So it's important to look at the full data to get the full pictures. So we have put together for this research a big data set on managers. So we have administrative data on the universe of Hungarian corporations. It's an exhaustive data set, about 1 million companies, including private businesses. and all their company representatives, including CEOs. So there are about 2 million CEOs represented in our data set. So other than relative to research on, say, American public corporations, this is actually a much bigger chunk of data, not just the size of the data, but really representing different types of firms, which I think is very, very important. And so we can then match financial information on these companies to their CEOs, and also importantly trade transactions. There is a little bit of a limitation in our data collection, because once Hungary joined the EU in 2004, then trade data we started to collect trade data in a different way, and so we basically had to stop this part of the research in 2003. But we are adding more and more data in later years and looking at what's happening in later years. But all the trade numbers I'm showing you are basically from the 1990s. So then we're doing basically a statistical analysis of all the foreign acquisitions of firms that are more than 20 employees and that are not in the financial sector. Okay, so we have some sample definitions, but it's really still a lot of, we have over 20,000 firms, even in this limited sample. And just to give you a sense of, where do these investments come from and where do managers come from? Here I created a map of the biggest investment partners of Hungary in the 1990s. So remember, this is the limited time period. And maybe not surprisingly, Austria and Germany are actually the biggest partners in terms of FDI, also in trade. And that's very natural, because of historical ties and geographic proximity with Austria, but also, the big economic weight of Germany. But maybe more interestingly, if you look at the neighboring countries, of course, geographic proximity is important, but it's not everything. So if you go to neighboring countries, there's actually much less of an investment from those countries. There's more investment from Italy, for example, or from France and from the UK. But so these are basically so we're looking at these investments, and we're looking at the variation we're going to compare German investment to French investment to Italian investment, and see how these firms are behaving differently. So I mentioned that firms might behave differently after they acquire their target. So the context again is Hungary. So they are acquiring a Hungarian company in the 1990s. So typically these are mostly industrial companies. Not all of them, but that was the typical acquisition target in the 1990s. Later in the 2000s, there are more service companies being acquired. And so we have 1,700, 1,800 of them that are being acquired. And many of them, actually, most of them replaced the management team, right? If you have a new acquisition, you want to make changes in the company, and you reshuffle the management team. But not all of those managers that you bring in are going to be expatriate managers who are the interest of our research. So about half of the time, you do replace the management team, but you hire local Hungarian managers. How do we know that? Because we basically see the names and home addresses of managers. I won't be able to reveal them, of course, because of privacy concerns, but for research purposes and aggregating them into these broad categories, we can ask this question, that half of the firms hire a new Hungarian manager and half of them hire foreign managers or expats. And so how do we compare these different managers? And so here I made up some names for you just to illustrate our methodology. while at the same time protect the privacy of individuals who are actually in the data set. So let's say we have a manager called Fioretta Lucchesi, who is from Italy. So this is based on the address, and this is the name. And then we look at both the address and also the name to infer that they have an address in Italy. So so the country address matches up Italy. The country language is Italian. And we also infer from the name that this sounds like an Italian name. So the manager language is also Italian, because it's not obvious that the address and the language of the manager match up. Here we have this example of Claudia Wolf from Germany. So she has all of these indicators for Germany, much like the Italian case that I explained. But actually, some of these language benefits might kind of spill over to Austria or Switzerland or other German-speaking countries, because they are sharing a common language. But another example that I already alluded to is that you might be a resident of Germany, yet your name might suggest that you actually speak, maybe in addition to German, you speak Italian. And so then in that case, actually, the language spoken by the manager is kind of separate from the language of the country where they're from. So this is actually interesting for us, because it can help us distinguish different stories for why having an expatriate manager presence in the company might be important. Do they bring their cultural knowledge with them? So I'll do a bit more speculation about this after I show you some statistical results. So basically what we do is take this company that is being overtaken, and then we do an event study. Actually, in finance, this is it's a very popular statistical methodology. Something happens in the life of the company. Let's look at stock returns before and stock returns after. The exception here is the difference here is that we're not looking at stock returns. Here we're looking at exporting behavior. So what is the probability that you become an exporter in a given year? And these are the years before the acquisition, and these are the years after the acquisition. And so we see that both for firms that are acquired and also for firms that replace their manager, the probability of exporting increases. And in particular, it increases in the country where the owner is from, so that's the red line, or where the manager is from, that's the blue line. And there might be a little bit higher effect for managers, but this is a quantitatively pretty big effect. Remember, these are all the corporations, not just large public corporations, including smaller private establishments. So not many of them export. So if you can increase the export probability by 5%, that's actually a big effect. If anything, there's an even stronger effect on importing. So importing probability goes up by 15% if you hire a manager from that country. And then, as I mentioned, we try to disentangle these effects and separate them into the different layers, if you like. So here, let me do this for the import effect, but you can, and the results are very similar for the export effect as well. Is what is the contribution of coming from the same country? So remember our managers, some of them come from Germany, then they are 6 percentage point more likely to export to Germany. What is the contribution of sharing a common language with the country? There's a little bit of extra contribution, so they might be a little bit more likely to export to Austria because there's a common language. And actually even bigger contribution for the manager language. So if this is a German manager with an Italian name, then there's this benefit for exporting to Italy. as well. So this is actually helpful in disentangling the different stories. It's probably not only a language story, because the direct language effect is rather small, and it's not very expensive to hire translators and the like. So it's probably more than just a pure language story. So we're really thinking about 3 explanations, and we're doing more deeper statistical analysis to discuss these explanations. So one is really integrating the company into the global supply chain. And within the global supply chain, really everything is happening within your supply chain: importing, exporting, the internal labor market of managers. So that's basically one interpretation, is that if you become part of Factory Germany, then we're going to see it in all aspects of the company. Another, and I think from the kind of data that we have, it's actually very difficult to tell apart explanation number 2 and explanation number 3. One is kind of a professional network, that if I have a manager who has a lot of experience doing business in Germany, then they have built their network. And then you can learn from them and how to export to this market, or how to trade with the market. And you can rely on the exact network that they brought with them. The other is, I think, is a little bit softer, and here's something that we can allude to, that we very much hope that this is also happening at the executive MBA classroom, is that if you come from a particular market and you understand the business culture in that market, then you can actually enable your business to connect better with other people who are familiar with that business culture. And so these are, I think, maybe not very surprising explanations, but we are I would say, one of the first studies to have a statistical evidence on the importance of these business culture and professional network mechanisms. So thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Miklos. I'm pretty sure that our faculty director, Maciej Kiszlowski, has a question for you.
Yes, good evening, everybody, and good evening, Miklos. This is such a fascinating piece of research, precisely because, it shows things, we can say beyond reasonable doubt that the thing that, is perhaps somewhat sad for us in the EMBA for the open world, yes, because it it does look that business is done in those little bubbles, or that are determined by nationality and language. Do you have any, just like getting a sense from the data and just like working on this topic for a long time, do you have any sense of what we can do to kind of facilitate the same type of trust and connections, beyond those bubbles? Yes. In other words, how to make your what you're finding less relevant for the future? Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one thing I can say to that is we want to know, right? Even if there's still a lot of role for personal connections. This doesn't mean that deals are being done in smoke-filled rooms or anything. It's just that there's some role for sharing a business culture or having these networks. And I think it's also highlight some of the limitation of this kind of statistical work, because we can talk about what we can measure, and what we can measure is your work experience in other countries, or the fact that you have lived in other countries because you have a foreign address.
Yes, no, I mean, this is I think really interesting. That first of all, I mean, it very strongly, if indirectly, shows the importance of trust and tacit knowledge. Yes, and so I do think that logically, if you kind of think about the sense of process that you are describing, international education, strong alumni bonds, and other kind of things that would work in a similar way as what you measure, are likely candidates for things that can offset or compensate for this effect, right?
Yeah, so I agree. So we would have to really understand better the mechanism, like why.
Yeah.
And I think trust, that's a great example. That might be an important mechanism. So this was actually something that we learned from last year's cohort of MBA students. We had, when COVID hit, and we had a great discussion with them. So we had a seminar about our COVID-related research and how online and working from home, how that might reshape businesses in the longer run. And very, very strong feedback was from practically everyone, is that you can do business at a distance up to some point, but to build trust, you really need face-to-face meetings. And so maybe
so like we could expect that if you did this study in the COVID world, the results would be even stronger, right? Because
I think so, yeah.
I mean, so this is I think in many ways, understanding that we are, that this is needed for businesses, that like we can't just assume it away in some sort of globalization daydreaming, is incredibly important and incredibly profound. Even if it kind of doesn't portray the world as like full of completely open opportunities for everybody, and completely based on meritocracy, right?
I think there is a sense in which more and more globalization created this sense that it's a small world, and you can connect to everyone. Information technologies have had that sense, but I think it's important to highlight that personal links are still very important. So mobility of people, meeting people, that's just very important. So distance has not gone away.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this is an Israeli week for CEU Executive MBA. Yesterday we had a fireside hour, our distinguished practitioner series, and we had, as the name of the series suggests, very distinguished practitioner Hemdat Sagi from Tel Aviv, from innovation hub of Volkswagen, and Hemdat was telling, in her little story, a very similar story, right, Thomas?
Sorry, I was muted. Exactly.
So basically, trust and specific culture is important, because, like, I guess economists would say they lower transaction costs, right, Miklos?
Yeah, but so I think it's important to dig deeper and say, what are those transaction costs? They are not like monetary costs. So what does trust mean for globalization? Why, what's the role for sharing language? As I mentioned, it's really, the effects are just way too big to be explained away by pure transaction costs. Hey, I have to hire an interpreter to be able to interact with Italians. There's definitely more to it than that.
Absolutely. I thank you so much, Miklos. It's always such a pleasure to listen to about your new research, and I'm also happy, although not surprised, that this kind of findings, because of how rigorous they are, and because this is so much more than an opinion, really kind of are great to start a discussion in an MBA classroom, because people can then build on it. And of course, conclusions, as we call in science, external validity is always much more speculative, but at least you have a very rigorous foundation from which you build those conclusions and implications, right?
Thank you, Maciej. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Miklos. In view of the time, we need to move on to the Q&A session, which I promised that I would collect questions from the audience, which I did in the meantime. And Maciej and I will be happy to answer those questions. The first question that I noted for you, Maciej, is the elephant in the room. I already mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. COVID measures, COVID safety on campus. Can you please talk about that issue?
Yes. So we are offering an online option, but as the name suggests, it's an option. And we have consistently throughout this pandemic did everything in our power to keep the on-site as a rule and online as a necessary exception. I'm happy to say we are quite successful in this. Since the start of the pandemic, we had just one fully online module when it was like legally impossible, and we didn't have any COVID infections on campus because we do a lot of testing. Everybody who comes to campus, even vaccinated people, are asked to go for a quick antigen every second day. It's free, it's available, it gives everybody a peace of mind. We have serious distancing measures, which are very difficult and costly for us, but we are doing them anyways. For example, we split classes sometimes into two groups, basically doubling the faculty so that people can be physically distant. So we run a very safe program, which is, however, because of the nature of what you were describing, Thomas, it's still a mainly on-site program. Yes, and people come, people travel. There is always an element of risk, but I have a sense that now that we are kind of moving into this situation, I hate to call it new normal, but let's call it a situation in which we don't have a way to eradicate this disease in the near term. I think what is going on in our heads, maybe Miklos should do another study about this, is we are starting to prioritizing in our lives things that will move online and things that need to stay on site because we lose so much. And I think more and more we will be doing those trade-offs. And I think a kind of personalized, high quality, high touch, American style MBA is that kind of a program, that's kind of a priority where I think people will continue to do it on site.
I think the takeaway is that we encourage everybody to come on site because it's the best learning experience. Of course, you can do it online, but an executive MBA is more than just watching a Zoom video or watching a YouTube video about finance, let's say. It's about interaction in class. It's about the networking part. It's about having drinks after class. It's about having lunch together. It's about interaction in class, all that social interaction that is going on beside the actual teaching and learning part. The next question is about the application process and the application requirements, which I'd be happy to take. The application process is pretty straightforward. You just go to our completely new redesigned website, start your application there. You upload your documents. We require a CV, a motivation letter, university diploma and transcript, and 2 references. You upload those documents. And once your application documents have been finalized and completed and submitted, we will check them, of course, for completeness, and you will be invited for an interview with one of our faculty members. And based on a fixed questionnaire, you will be assessed. We're not playing mind games during the interview. It's just an interview in order to get to know your motivation, in order to get to know you as a person, beside the CV. And based on that interview, you will receive an admission decision that will express if you're being accepted to the program or not. The requirements can be seen on our website. It's pretty clear. It's an executive MBA. We require at least 8 years of work experience, of which at least 3 years of managerial or some kind of leadership experience. We require undergraduate degrees from university, no matter what the field of study was. Proficiency in English is required, and that's basically the formal criteria. The next question that I noted is about if there are any exams and if there's a thesis, Maciej.
So there is no thesis. Instead of a thesis, we have a capstone. A capstone is an integrative project overseen by our faculty member, Mike Labelle, that is aimed at you applying what you have learned at CEU Executive MBA to real world. And by that, we mean 2 things. There is the so-called strategic analysis component, which is you apply frameworks and tools of analysis that we taught you, which is an important part of the program. But also there is a leadership component in which you apply the skills and abilities that you have acquired in terms of your leadership abilities and change management abilities. So like we actually ask you as part of our thesis to actually change something in the world, however small it may be, but it can be also big and ambitious. Examples include mentoring somebody and helping somebody, turn a corner professionally, or implementing a project. Sometimes people do it in sequence. They do a strategic analysis component first, and then they apply it or oversee its execution in a company or in a think tank or in a non-profit organization as a leadership component. So that's the capstone. Exams, I know Thomas would remind me about the second part of the question, so I am not going to let him do this. And exams happen, but I think very interestingly, we completely offloaded exams from the modules. So like the idea is it's very precious time when like everybody comes or joins online for these 4 or 9 day modules. And this is a time to exchange ideas, you know, to talk with Miklos about the role of trust and tacit knowledge in business relations or things like that. And exams are done online after the module.
After the module, yeah, I just wanted to add, we're not wasting your time during the module with, you know, sitting in class, doing exams. Once the module is done, you will travel home and you have a time frame of, I think it's 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, where you can do the online exam, and you can do it at your convenience. You can do it at night, you can do it during work, you can do it on the weekends. Whenever it pleases you, you can do the online exam. Of course, once you start the exam, you need to finish it. I mean, that's just, I think that's clear to say. In view of the time, I would like to finalize the open day with the last and maybe most important question about financial support and scholarships available, which I'm happy to take this question. We're happy to offer a variety of financial support. Scholarships and fellowships are part of our DNA and not just charity that we give away, because we want to empower, we want to encourage people who wouldn't be able to participate in such a program. That's why we're offering basically 3 streams of financial support. The first one is the Open World Scholarship, which aims at people who are doing something professionally, or, you know, whatever the profession is, something aligned with our mission, you know, the open society approach, questioning dogmas, questioning hierarchies. In most cases, it affects people coming from the humanitarian field, but it does not exclude people coming from the corporate world. The second stream of scholarships is the need-based scholarships, which solely take into consideration your income situation and the country of your residence, because the same position might have different levels of income if you're based in Germany or in Ukraine, for example. And the third stream of financial support are the country-specific merit-based scholarships. They're visible on our website, again, because we have so many of them. They're country-specific. We have, for example, a Central European fellowship for Romani managers. We have an international fellowship for managers with a disability. We have certain fellowships for business women in Russia, Turkey, etc. And we have an international LGBTIQ fellowship, etc., etc. You need to look up where you're coming from on our website, and if there's a specific fellowship that suits you. Of course, you can also book a one-on-one consultation with me using that link that I just shared, and I will be happy to advise you on our scholarship options, so you don't have to look up, you don't have to search for them on our website. I'd be happy to advise you on our scholarships. In view of the time, it's 7:15 in Central Europe, it's 8:15 in Tel Aviv. I would like to conclude and thank everybody for joining us tonight. I would like to thank Miklos and Maciej from the academic side for joining us tonight. I would like to thank Agnes and Anita from the students and alumni part for joining us tonight. And thank you, the participants, the attendees, for joining us tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to book a one-on-one consultation with me, and let's take it from there. Good night from Tel Aviv.